Hi and welcome to this CPI webinar short. I'm Cathy Duncan, and over the past few years I've had the real privilege of working alongside schools across the UAE and the wider Gulf region, supporting leaders and staff to help them create a much safer, more inclusive and positive learning environment in their school. What I've found is every school is really unique. Every school has its own culture, their own community that bring with it real strengths and also challenges. But despite these differences, they all seem to share the same ambition, and that is to create a place where children thrive, staff feel confident and supported, and learning can really flourish. Today, I'd like us to reflect on why a trauma-informed approach is so important in helping schools realise this ambition, and invite you to look beyond behaviour, to really scratch behind it and explore what your children are trying to communicate through their behaviour, and perhaps more importantly, think about how we can help. So what comes to mind then when you hear the phrase trauma-informed approach? Many people go straight to think about safeguarding. Some start to think about mental health, or children perhaps who've experienced real significant adversity. And of course, while these certainly play a part of it, trauma-informed approach or practice is really much broader than that. It's not about becoming therapists. It's about understanding that experiences really shape how children think and feel, how they learn, and how they behave. When we talk about trauma, trauma isn't the event itself, it's the individual's response to that experience. So two children can experience the same event, but respond very differently depending on the support and protective factors that they have around them. That's why trauma-informed practice isn't about identifying who's experienced the trauma, but it's about recognising that behaviour is often communication and responding to that behaviour with real curiosity and empathy rather than just assumption. A trauma-informed approach doesn't lower any kind of expectations or remove any accountability to the behaviour, but instead it combines those high expectations with real empathy, with consistency, and with the support that children really need in order to succeed. So when we talk about trauma, it's really important to recognise that it doesn't always show up or it doesn't always look the way that we might expect it to. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about the work that we do here is because of the unique communities that we serve here in the UAE and the Gulf region. Our schools are among the most diverse in the world. They bring together students from a wide range of cultures, languages, all with very different life experiences. Many of our children are navigating frequent moves, changing schools, different cultures and languages. They might be separated from family. They might be experiencing regional uncertainty. All of this while trying to find out where they belong in these communities that are constantly changing. None of these experiences automatically become trauma. In fact, children are remarkably resilient. But when challenges build up without the right support, they can affect how safe a child feels, how they connect with others, and how ready they are to learn. That's why a trauma-informed approach is really so valuable, because it encourages us to look beyond the behaviour that we see in front of us in our classrooms and across our schools, and to consider the experiences that might be shaping the behaviour that we see. The real challenge for us, however, is that we rarely get to see the experiences that the children are carrying. What we do see is the behaviour. And that behaviour is often the first sign for us that something beneath the surface really needs our attention. We know now from lots of neuroscience that when children experience prolonged stress, that the brain naturally prioritises survival over learning. That's why what looks like defiance in your classroom may actually be distress. What looks like avoidance might actually be anxiety. And what looks like disengagement may simply be overwhelm. Things are way too much for that child. One of the most powerful shifts that trauma-informed school can make is changing the question that it asks. So instead of asking, what's wrong with this child, we ask, what might this behaviour be communicating? And perhaps more importantly, what does this child need from me right now? So I want you to think about one child in your school. You know, that one child who you feel the most challenged by through their behaviour. Now imagine that rather than being the problem, their behaviour is their best attempt to cope with something that they don't yet have the words to express. That simple shift in perspective can completely transform the way we respond to the behaviour across our schools. Now, trauma-informed schools aren't just about supporting our children, they're also about supporting the adults who care for them. Teachers and leaders are always saying to me, Cathy, behaviour feels really different now. It's not necessarily worse, but it definitely feels more complex. I see staff giving so much of themselves every single day to meet the emotional as well as the academic needs of their students. And as educators, that's just what we do, isn't it? We care deeply. But this emotional investment that we're giving day in, day out can really be exhausting. And this is why staff wellbeing is such an important part of a trauma-informed culture. When adults feel supported, they're better able to stay calm. They're better able to build those strong relationships and help children really regulate their emotions. I often say that children borrow our calm as adults. And if we want calm, connected classrooms, we need to make sure that we're also taking care of the adults who create these environments. So why does this matter to schools? Well, the impact of adversity doesn't stay just with the student or with the adult. It can, and it absolutely does, ripple throughout the whole school community. Research into adverse childhood experiences has shown that children facing significant adversity may be more likely to experience challenges with emotional well-being, with relationships, with behaviour, and ultimately with their learning. But there's equally an important message that I really want to stress. Children are incredibly resilient, and positive supportive relationships can make an absolute profound difference. Schools can't always change what's happened to a child before they arrive, but what they can do is have a real lasting influence on what happens when they're in school. Sometimes one calm, emotionally available adult, one trusting relationship, or one consistent routine can completely change a child's experience of school. That's what a trauma-informed approach is all about, recognising those needs really early on and then responding in ways that help every child feel safe. This is one of the most important concepts, in my opinion, of trauma-informed practice, felt safety. Felt safety isn't something that we as adults can decide, it's something another person experiences. So we might say that our school is safe, but the more important question that we need to ask is, do our children feel safe? Do our staff feel supported? Do our families feel welcomed? Because if people don't experience safety emotionally, psychologically, and relationally, simply telling them that they're safe isn't going to change how they feel. So the good news is that felt safety isn't created just by policy alone. It's created through the everyday interactions that we have with one another. It's how we show up. It's how we greet children every morning. It's how we respond when mistakes are made. It's how we support someone who's distressed, and how we make every member of our school community feel seen. How we make them feel valued, and how we make them feel that they really belong to part of our community. Now, these moments might seem really small, and sometimes they might feel pretty insignificant, but together they shape the culture of a school. And when we consistently put those relationships and those people at the centre of everything that we do, then we really start to create environments where children and adults alike really start to feel safe enough to learn and feel safe enough to really thrive. Now, we've developed lots of free resources packed with practical ideas and strategies that you can begin to use with your staff straight away. You can download the one that you see on your screen from our CPI website, and I'll give you details of that at the end of the webinar. Felt safety isn't created by chance. It comes from consistency, and consistency is built through a whole school-wide tiered approach. We must remember that just as we provide different levels of support for our students, we also need to provide different levels of support for our staff and our organisation. So at the base are the things that every child benefits from: strong relationships, predictable routines, emotionally available adults, clear expectations, positive reinforcement. All of this creates a real safe learning environment for everyone, very much a universal approach. Some children will need a little bit more. They'll need some early interventions, some real targeted support. And then there's a much smaller number of children that you will have in school that require highly individualised plans, specialised support, personalised interventions. Here, they need a much more robust plan to really meet their needs. But here's what's really important. If our universal practice is strong, then far fewer children are going to need that intensive intervention. And at CPI, our 360 education suite is designed to do exactly that. It provides a whole school approach, from reviewing current practice and developing policies, through leadership consultancy and whole staff PD, to much more targeted support to those working with students who have more complex behavioural needs. The aim that we have isn't simply to deliver the training. We meet schools exactly where they are, and we work with them in partnership to support them in realising their ambition that I mentioned right at the very beginning, to create a school where children really thrive, where staff feel confident and supported, and learning can really flourish. So as we come to the end of today's webinar, I'd encourage you, don't feel that you need to change everything at once. These are 3 actions that you see that are a great place to start. Choose just one. Begin the conversation with your team. Look at one aspect of your practice through a trauma-informed lens, or identify one small change that could make a real difference in your school. But remember, being trauma-informed isn't just about understanding the principles, it's about how we choose to show up, what we do with that understanding every day and in every interaction. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you'd like to explore any of this further, then please visit the CPI website, where you'll find some free resources along with more information about how we can support your school on its trauma-informed journey.